Welcome to the B2B Community Builder Show, the episode 200 extravaganza. I'm your host and chief executive connector, Pablo Gonzalez. And with me today is a very special guest, a dear friend of mine who is, she's like a cultural icon these days. No big deal. She is the steward of a beloved brand and a beloved story that has changed many people's lives. The author of her own story, which is fascinating enough. Amanda, the more I've dove into kind of like, the more I think about the idea that you got thrust into leading this like company at 24 years old with no background, the more fascinated by that part of like your metamorphosis has been, and even more, right? Like got thrust into a giant company with high power partners at 24 years old when she was a musician, and just like stuck to it, figured it out, read her dad's book, and winning by basically eating your own dog food is something I'm a big fan of, right? The ultimate sales machine. It's a household name. I feel like everybody knows this book. It's where the Dream 100 comes from. It's where the core story concept comes from. We're going to talk about all of that. But more importantly, somebody that I just don't know if I would have ever gotten the chance to get to know at this level, maybe get to know, but not at this level, if it weren't for content creation, for having a podcast, for like the journey that I'm on that's kind of parallel. We've gotten to collaborate in incredible things, and we've become really good friends. So I'm just super pumped to have you here for the 200th episode. Amanda Holmes, welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here. I am an adoring fan of everything that you do. So it means so much to me to be able to be a part of it. So thank you.
It hit me when we did that last Instagram live that we're both like hype people.
Oh.
And when we get...
It's like a hype person on a hype person who's hyping the other person at the same time. It's so good.
I love it. All right, cool. We're going to get into your story in a second. I want to welcome the community. Everybody, the chat's already lit up right here. Who we got checking? Oh my God, this is a long scroll right here. We got Lee Bishop in the house. He is the official troublemaker of the community. So if you get a DM from him, there's going to be giggles. We got Dawn Bates in the house. She's our resident PhD candidate and reigning MVP of the community and the world-class author herself. We got Gareth Bavelet, one of my best buddies from high school, who is on the other side of the pond. He is launching his own podcast coming here soon. We got Pratiti, my dear friend, who is a mindset coach and an amazing, beautiful human and a realtor and a real estate person. We got Denise Murta Bachman from Houston, an internet friend of mine. Denise, pumped that you're here today. Loving the excitement from you too. Who else we got? We got Lori Goldman, who is the super connector of this community. Lori's got like intros coming out of her sleeves, like David Copperfield's got cards, as it were. Who else we got in here? All right, scrolling through. Deb Shell, former journalist, master question creator, and community strategist. Deb Shell, good to have you, Deb, in the house. Penny Rose, forensics accountant for a 3-letter agency who helps content creators. She is a CPA for hire for content creators. Probably a good person for you to know as well. Amanda, and that's what we got so far. Checking in the chat. Love to have the community.
That was so epic. Can we just appreciate Pablo's epicness to announce all of you guys like that? That was so good. I just need to find some way to bring you around everywhere, so we just continue to hype everyone you meet. It's so awesome.
That is the first series of hype man on hype man compliments for today, right there. Thank you, Amanda. And by the way, yes, I am going to follow you around. As I've told you, I think it's a good look every time I hang out with you because of this energy that we have together. So I'm going to stalk you a little bit as you do your keynote speeches around the world. But for today, I want to talk about you, right? I want to talk about the idea that you had this monumental task of rewriting, right? Like a cult classic, world famous book for a new edition. When was the original one released?
2007.
2007. So 15 years of updates on a book that people have based their lives and businesses around at any level, right? Like up there with the E-Myth and up there with Traction and all these different books that people have taken these formulas and just built their businesses around them. I've seen you in rooms where people credit this book for completely changing their life. So monumental task of updating it. And then, as if that wasn't hard enough, the uber monumental task of getting this thing to sell like hotcakes when everybody already has a copy. And that's what we're going to talk about, right? Like this launch strategy that you created. And I would love to start with why did you need to go super strategy on a launch? You had a major publisher deal. You are a famous person. You have an incredible network. Why did you have to go so hard at really creating a launch for something like this?
Oh, so my why was more around the mission and vision for it. My father died at 55. He made a great wealth for himself, but I lost him too young and he had too much to do. And so the reason why I redid the whole book was to bring that 13th chapter that I wrote about how to live a rich and full life, because if you double your sales, but then because of it, your life is at jeopardy or your health is at jeopardy or your family is at jeopardy, I don't think it's worth it. And so I had to bring that piece to the table and talk about this letter that he had written about how he generated more wealth in 6 months than the prior 8 years combined. And that was critical for me. So it was less about the sales and more about the life. So I was determined, regardless of how many times my publisher said I wouldn't sell so many copies, or they didn't believe that I could sell out the stock, and I ended up selling it out twice before we even launched the books. So it was more my mission that pushed me more than anything.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you want to quickly tell the story of like finding that email and writing that chapter? Because I like that was like, I know that's on the last podcast that we did together, but I feel like it's such an incredible story.
I think it's interesting. I was with you one of the times where like so I redid that chapter. I counted it on my plane ride. I kept saying, I've written it 100 times. I went to my email and I actually counted the amount of times I rewrote chapter 13, and it was 94 times. I have 94 different versions of that final chapter. I really just wanted it to be as perfect as possible because the publisher was asking for the final draft. And this was like 2 years ago. And I think that I'm delivering it that day. And so I'm in this hotel room and I'm searching through my father's old emails, because that was the only way that I really learned his business, was reading through his old emails. Because everyone would come to me and say, your father thought I was the best. And I'd be like, okay. And then I'd go and look in his emails to see if that was actually true, because everyone lied to me. But so I was going through his emails and I found this freaking gem. I mean, like 4 a.m, like discovered this thing where he just admits to how he generated majority of his wealth in the last 6 months of his life. And this realization he made about how to make true abundance. And it was completely opposite from what he had been doing his entire life. I then blended that with my own story of what I saw that he experienced, and then the decade now that I've been a part of the business and 8 years of being CEO. So I had to blend our two worlds together to craft that message. And yeah, that's the mission.
It's awesome. It's so good. Yeah, I feel like it was pretty recent when you had found that and you were like getting going on that chapter when we were in Vegas like a year and a half ago. Yeah, it's crazy to see how far it's come.
I knew it was good when I said it's the encore my father never got to give, and how to live a rich and full life. And it was the first time that came out of my mouth, and I watched you like your hair stood on your arms, and I went, ding, ding, ding. I said something right here. Pablo reacted that way. So you were a part of that course of writing that.
Interesting. Yeah. I remember when you said that, and I remember the goosebumps. Like I remember it like yesterday, man. Really, really cool. So awesome. So you have this monumental task, you have this noble mission, you have this like wonderful new thing to put out into the world, along with the old thing that had helped everybody. And you have a whole ton of tactics to update it. I just want to say, first of all, I really love, this is the second time I've ever seen this, right? The idea, and the first time was Jim Collins when he did Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0, how you have like the original text in white and then the inserts in gray, and you can see what the updates are for each of these sections and how it plays. I love this idea for like a new edition, because it's hard to, when you're already, you're like, well, I read the first one. Why would I, like Robert Cialdini's Influence, he came out with a new edition. I was like, I don't know if I should get another one, right? But like the visual representation of all the new material and all the actualized stuff, I think is great. The idea that your dad wrote this thing back when like him advertising on radio was a big deal. Man, the world
Yeah.
has changed. So ton of stuff to update in here. Do you want to kind of give us a little bit of what is out of the things that you've actualized from the old edition to this one? Is there any tactic or anything in particular that you were just like, oh man, this is my favorite thing that I'm adding? That's my little twist here.
Oh man, I did so many. I sprinkled them all through the book, but chapter 7 was the biggest difficulty, the 7 months of marketing. 15 years ago, the average company would be on 7 different marketing channels to be able to get out into the marketplace. Today, we're on an average of 14, even more. Wait, it's 13 different mediums with 5 social media pages and 3 paid advertising networks. So we're doing double the amount of work and really for a fraction of the results, because it used to take 7 different images for you to see a brand and remember it. Today, we're at an average, you probably haven't heard this market data from me yet. We're at an average of 500. We have to see a brand 500 times for it to be recognizable. That's because there's so much content out there today. So my father came up with all of these concepts before the internet. So when he came out with the book, he's talking about radio, television, yellow pages, faxing. I'm like, oh man, Dad, you're killing me. How do I reimagine chapter 7? That was a really difficult thing, but I got some help. So I'm a big believer in, if you want to do something, you want to do it right, it's great to have somebody that's already done it to help guide you. That's why I have a business coach. That's why I had a book coach. That's why I have a spiritual coach. I just surround myself with coaches. My company also does coaching. I practice what I preach. I met Julianne Eason, who is an utter brilliant genius that just extracts. She calls herself a genius extractor. And I think that's a great way to describe it. She just took everything that I had in pieces and said, well, since people are so overwhelmed by marketing today, let's create a checklist of the process that it takes for you to know and discern if your marketing is actually creating an ROI. Because the second biggest problem that SMBs have this last year was that they couldn't figure out if their marketing was generating a good ROI. So in every marketing medium, we left a checklist of, okay, if you're doing this, make sure you have these 5 things. And if you don't have one of them, that's probably where it's broken. Then you can come back and keep checking in this checklist. My father invented the 12 core competencies for doubling sales 15 years ago because there wasn't internet. Today, the information is so valuable and it's everywhere that I found I had to simplify his concepts rather than make them more complex. So I did a lot of simplification. Like my father's famous for the Dream 100, the fastest, least expensive way to double sales. It's the one strategy that has doubled the sales of more companies than any other. And yet so many people see, okay, get 100 of your better buyers and then go after them with a vengeance. That's basically what it is. But people would see 100 and go, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know how to go after 100. That seems like a lot. And they'd start a list and then never follow up. Whereas I'm saying, why not just do a target 12 then? Just pick 12, just pick 4, just pick 1. We've had clients that have doubled their sales just by picking one ideal prospect that they knew would completely change their world. So like I said, with every step, I was trying to simplify and organize to make it easier to consume because there's just too much information out there today.
Awesome. Awesome. So the overall thing was it's so counterintuitive to think that we went from having like 3 to 5 different ways to advertise. Maybe you had to make like, what was the original number? 7 impressions? What was the original impression numbers?
From 7 to 500.
Yeah, from 7 to 500. And to think that the key of going from the idea of having to have 7 impressions to 500 impressions, you think that it would be complexity, right? Like you think that you have to add all these skill sets and all these other things, but it goes back to the core kind of concept in this book, right? Because it's not just a sales book. This is like a operations manual for growing a business. And the idea of pig-headed discipline and determination means that you had to simplify these concepts from what seemed to be a simpler era into a more complex era. You had to simplify the concepts. I think that's really brilliant. Man, when did that hit you? So that was Julie kind of saying like, let's simplify this thing and let's streamline it.
Well, it came from talking to our clients. The more that I talked to them, the more I found the same thing repeating over and over again of the ones that were truly successful, chunked it down to a lot less. Because when my father first invented the Dream 100, he had a marketing department that was helping him. He had multiple salespeople that were helping him. He had a whole organization. So 100 at that time felt like a very little amount. Whereas many companies that are implementing this, if you gave a sales rep 15 great leads and said, just focus on these bigger, better buyers that are maybe 10x your normal lifetime value of a client, they'll have their hands full just following those 10. It's whale hunting. So it doesn't have to be a ton. It was really just listening. I'm very big on listening, observing like what people are saying in the chat. I have a ring on. I have a thread on my bracelet. They're like, she's not wearing any jewelry. I'm like, okay, well, I have a ring. But I was observing what our own clients were saying about their results. And the biggest hiccup was that they couldn't even determine who their Dream 100 was. And how can you get your bigger, better clients if you can't even figure out who you're targeting?
That's a great lesson to take here, right? Like for entrepreneurs that are, and I'm guilty of this too, right? This is a lesson for me, right? Like I'm always trying to add the new humdinger thing, or I want to like add a strategy to something. The idea like simplification leads to bigger results in an ever complex world is something that I've been keying in on, right? Like, how do I simplify my proposals? How do I simplify my product offering? How do I streamline the people that I go after? So I'm hearing you loud and clear, and I love it. But I want to get to the launch, right? Like we tease this whole thing as like the best launch I've ever seen. I feel really fortunate that I live in Jacksonville across the street from Jerry McNamara. And when you were kind of getting started, I feel like it was kind of like the first huddle for launching this thing. And I was in the room when Troy, who I have to assume has been an unbelievable partner for you from everything that you've told me, said, I think what's important here is that we do this thing by eating our own dog food, that we practice what we preach and use the methods from the book in order to execute this launch. And immediately it clicked for everybody, right? Like it clicked for you, it clicked for everybody. And what I see from the outside in from that moment on was a very high level execution of the core story methodology and the Dream 100 framework that you used. Can you kind of talk us through how those two things are, first, I guess, introduce the core story. I don't know if everybody knows that. And then talk to me a little bit about how from that day, set that thing up to build all this momentum.
Yeah. So I guess let me back it up by saying 40% of the content that we put online today actually hinders the probability of a sale. Half of what we put out is actually deemed completely useless. So what we found is because there's so much to do online, we're just checking boxes of I've posted on Facebook, I've posted it on LinkedIn, I've written a blog, I've sent out an email, but we're not thinking about the strategic objectives that should be accomplished with every tactic. So my father taught this whole, a strategist will slaughter the tactician every single time, because what does a strategist care about? If you are trying to make a sale, let's say somebody calls their way in to try and get an appointment, and all they talk about is, hey, I'd love to talk to you about my services. I think they'd be great. I think you'd like to hear what I have to say. You will, if you make 100 cold calls, let's say, or if you post on your Facebook page, 3% of the people that you are posting to or reaching out to will be interested. That's why we get 100 messages in LinkedIn saying, hey, would you like to work with us? We're great. It's so obnoxious, but they know it's a numbers game. They know they'll get at least 3% of the people that raise their hand and say, yes, I need a product or service like yours. But the difference is what a strategist does is they lead with, would you like to be an expert? Would you like your prospect to feel that you are an expert? Would you like your prospect to feel that they're in the hands of a true advisor so that if they needed you, they would reach out to you first and you only because you left such a lasting impression. As soon as somebody they know asks for a product or service like yours, you would be the first that they would refer. You would want to promote them actually referring your business. I mean, there's so many different objectives that we want with every single tactic we do. So that's the brilliance of my father's methodology, that's why it's been timeless for the last 50 years. People can take what he taught from cold calling, and I'm implementing it in Instagram DMs, and it's still working because it's about the higher level rather than just the tactics. The tactics are the only things that have changed. So
let me pause you there, Amanda. So essentially what you're saying is this idea that most people focus on the one objective thing that they have to do, and they're not thinking multiple kind of like moves down the line, right? Like your father was talking about making a cold call, and even if that cold call didn't make the sale, it would leave a lasting impression in someone's mind in a way that could then generate a referral or allow them to get into a conversation later on that could lead to the next call being easier. You're doing similar things with social media posts and keynote speeches and all these different things, right? That's kind of what you're talking about. So then you took this launch and you thought, hey, why don't I just not go try and sell this book, but why don't I go and sell this book in a way that's going to lead to a whole bunch of like tailwinds that come behind this book into, you know, a giant business kind of like level up, right?
I'll give you an example. So I was trying to get on television. And we sent out a press release. Some of my team were sending out press releases to them saying, hey, Amanda Holmes just came out with a new edition of her book, Ultimate Sales Machine. You know, you should really report on this book. That one didn't get us any TV appointments. Versus I sent out a press release. I knew the concept of a press release, and we've had clients that have used press releases, but I had never actually written a press release for my company. So my first press release I ever wrote, I followed our framework and I led with an education. So I said, every single day, 3,076 businesses are shutting their doors today. And there's one thing that has saved 250,000 businesses worldwide. I'd love to come and share that with you in your 4-minute spot on your television show. This is based around, right? So the one thing was the book that has assisted 250,000 businesses, and every day 3,076 businesses shut their doors. That's actually just happening all the time, but I tried to make it relevant for right now. So instead of talking about just trying to get me on television, talking about me and my book, I made it applicable to a television station saying, this is trends that are happening in the marketplace. This is what you should be listening to because there's a track record of something that has assisted over generations. And we'd love to come and share that with you. It's a completely different approach. One is just me. And some people will pick up on that. Others want to hear from a true expert, from a methodology that has generated billions of dollars, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I don't know if you and me have talked about category design a lot, but it's a discipline that I very much subscribe to. And one of the revolutionary things about it is that you evangelize a problem instead of your own solution. And that's something that your dad was doing a long time ago, right?
Yes.
By evangelizing the problem, you're not only leading with something that's going to get people to buy into it, but you're essentially sending a press release, writing the copy for the headline or the thing for the news that they're going to lead with already. So you're already adding value to the equation by not only you're going to have an expert on because here's these stats, but this is how you get to promote it too because it just worked on you, right?
Yeah. And I got a television spot within 24 hours. Of sending out that press release. And I love what Gareth is saying. The hardest bit is getting tacticians to become strategists or being enough of a strategist to manage the tacticians effectively. That is spoken by a true strategist. So I appreciate you, Gareth.
There you go. All right. So then we zoomed out and now you are approaching this thing as like, let's be strategic about everything that we do. How does Core Story fit into the launch?
So I also followed this methodology of the 7 musts of marketing. My father said that you have to be everywhere to the people that are most important to you. So I took this same story and implemented it across many different channels. So social media, across our website, across our email, across our affiliates, across press releases, across trade shows, all of these different marketing mediums all came from the same core story. And that core story was a blend of story, which since the beginning of time, humanity has remembered our history based upon story. That's why we'll remember a Netflix show over what happened in the 5 p.m. meeting we had 2 weeks ago, because we remember stories. And then that market data is the science to back it up, because we've lost faith in majority of society today. Millennials will trust a mom blogger over the 5 p.m. news. That's the kind of place that we live in today, right? If you have 20,000 followers, someone's like, I believe you, regardless of if they bought those followers. So that's a whole nother tangent. But what we want to do is create that legitimacy and that authority. So you blend story with market data, and you've got both the logical thinkers and the emotional thinkers. So we blend those together. And I did that in 2 different ways. One was like what I said with getting the press release out. I use those data points quite often in podcast interviews, to get on podcasts, to get some of my affiliates, all throughout those pieces, networking at trade shows. But then also there was the story aspect, which that was the biggest shock to me, to be honest. The one thing I didn't want to do time and time again. I met my book coach, Julie. Our first meeting, she said, okay, I've read your foreword. It's called Dear Reader, because normally forewords are to Dear Reader. She's I think that you should write a letter to your father, and it should be Dear Dad. And I looked at her and went, heck no. Like, never in a million years would I put that in the book. Like, it was so personal that it hit a nerve, and I just blurted out no. So then I ended up, much to my own hesitancy, I said yes, that I would do it as an exercise. And I wrote it. And it was beautiful. It like fell out of me, just like it was channeled from somewhere greater. And so I was nervous about it, but I said, okay, we're putting it in the book. Then my press team saw it, and the rest of my marketing team saw it, and they said, that is the story we're leading with, is your story about you and your dad. And I went, oh my God, please no. Are you serious? I can talk about marketing. I can talk about doubling sales. I can give you this case study and that case study. And they're like, no, it's Dear Dad. So then we crafted it into a video, and we had 2 different videos. One that showed like my life, like visuals of me in my childhood with my father, very personal, or this version of me speaking the foreword with black background and text. And I went, that's it. That one, I really like that one. And everybody was like, absolutely not. Like, it's all about the home videos. It adds so much more to it. So again, very uncomfortable. Over and over again, I'm like, I don't think we should lead with this. Even right before we posted, I'm like, I am so freaking nervous to put this video out. I can't believe we're leading this book, this sales book. We're leading with a letter that has made many grown men cry. And they continue to watch it over and over again. So that concept of a story that people just resonated with, my own heartfelt letter to my dad, was again just another reinforcement of this concept of core story. Yeah, that was a shocker. That truth was more important than any marketing or sales tactic.
Wow. Okay. So truth is more important than marketing or sales tactic, and story was the way to get it in, right? Like, one of the fundamental concepts within core story that I like that you talk about really well is this idea that only 3% of your buyers are in market at any moment, right? So like, straight out of your dad's original book, right? Like, if you have a stadium full of your market, how are you going to talk about something that can speak to everybody? And I think that you teach this thing, right? I went through the boot camp. This core story boot camp is amazing. And you teach this thing as a way to cast this like wide net, and then bring the conversation, into like getting people closer to that nucleus of like that thing that you're talking about. And there isn't a better example of that than this idea of this like sales book. The story doesn't lead with how you're going to improve sales, right? Because even if you think about a stadium full of people, how many of them are salespeople, right? How many of them think that they're not good enough and need better sales, right? How many of them are, business owners that hire salespeople? Not as many, but how many of them can relate to a story of a daughter trying to do right by her dad? 100%. Right. So I think that that's an incredible example of the power of story and the power of the core story methodology of casting this net that can engulf a whole population into the story that then can lead to Now let's talk about doubling your business, right? Like, I just find that super fascinating of how out there it went, right? Because it wasn't market data that was like existential threat to businesses. It wasn't like all this other stuff that you are more than capable of creating. It was this very like, I mean, it's a very core story, right? Like it hits at the core of your being, which I found fascinating. So, all right. So enough about that one. You put that together. You now have, this is the messaging, right? Like you have your data and the frameworks that you like to teach engulfed in a very wide ranging story of the things that you have to do. And now it's time for Dream 100, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I really focused in on quality over quantity because I've generated heaps of leads in the past without spending a dime on advertising. But what I found was that I didn't go after the quality. So tying it back from Dream 100 to Target 12, I really focused on just 4 organizations, 5 that I knew were in line with my better buyers. And some of them were clients, past clients, new prospective clients. Some were affiliates, some were trade shows. One of the greatest ROIs for me was actually my trade show tour that I did. So I got a speaking engagement at HubSpot's Inbound, which has about 10,000 businesses attend live. And people pay $60,000 to be on a stage there. But I applied. You can go on Inbound's website and apply online. I applied 5 different times with 5 different talks, titles, and here's what I would talk about. And 2 of them got accepted. I don't know why 2 got accepted, but then I only spoke once. It was very confusing. But anyways, I would highly recommend that if you ever speak. That's definitely a great way to go because they have really quality businesses there. So I got to speak for this wonderful crowd that was sold out, and not like very few people left for a whole 90 minutes of just what we teach, which is education-based marketing, or another word would be core story. So that was critical. In every step that I did was quality over quantity. Who are the most important people that I need to interact with and do some kind of work with? Like I was obsessed with this Indian company because I want to go to India and spend more time in India and assist more Indian communities because I study under an Indian guru, and I may be white on the outside, but inside I'm Indian. I eat like an Indian, I pray like an Indian, all these things. So
Sing like an Indian. I've seen it.
You what?
Sing like an Indian.
Oh, yes. Yes. I do sing like an Indian. I sing in Sanskrit. Yes. Pratiti has been saying such lovely things in the web chat. I'm blushing, but I really wanted their business too. And I ended up they bought 100 books, by the way. Woo. So it's just this process of continuing to follow up with the people who's one person that could change your world. One. It could be so many things. It could be an affiliate. It could be a direct client. It could be an association. It could be a Facebook group. It could be an influencer.
Yeah, that to me is one of the more fascinating applications of it, right? Because I think historically, if nobody's heard of the Dream 100 strategy, then you've probably never been marketed to by Russell Brunson. So you've never used Facebook in your life. But the thing that I find it interesting is that most people see the Dream 100 as a sales strategy of just like, what are the top 100 accounts that I can land? But you as a strategist thought through that more, right? Like you were just like, it's not the top 100 accounts that I can land. It's the top 12 stages that I can leverage is a way that I would put it in my own language, right? Like, how can I go to like the top 12 relationships that can lead to the most relationships from having that relationship, not just buy the most books at that moment, like HubSpot.
I can give an example. So I did a keynote last week for 400 people in a room, and we generated 122 leads from it, which was great. And we'll close a couple into sales. I got on the stage of HubSpot. There were 400 people in the room. We got 200 leads from that event and 40 sales appointments I have 1.5 million in my pipeline from that one stage for that 90 minutes. And it'll probably generate me another 10 million over the next 3 years. So if you're going to be on a stage, you want to make sure that one stage can produce you 10 times the results. So, I mean, that's one example of it, right? I have another one that I'm working on right now that if I win the one client, I get 230 companies. So instead of going after one company, the one that gets me 230 is a much better approach, right? If you're going to do the work, might as well do one that has a greater leverage.
Yeah. Listen, I think one of the stories that I like the most about this thing is just kind of how you got in the door at ClickFunnels, right? Like you basically connected with the CEO of ClickFunnels and stalked him on Instagram for like a year because they were part 3 years, right?
3 months, 3 months, 3 months.
3 months.
It
Tell the
feels like
story.
a year because it
Tell
was
the story,
every
right?
single day.
Yeah, because the outcome at the end of the day was like Russell Brunson coming on your book launch, like them bringing you in. So you want to kind of tell that story of how you executed that strategy in a very approachable way that I think a lot of people can.
Yes. So 80% of the leads that you generate from events are never followed up on. So let's say you met somebody at your last event, 10 people, only 2 of them will you actually follow up. It's terrible. So one thing you could consider, and you can do this with me right now. Let's do this for fun. So we just met. We're on this show right now with Pablo. It's so much fun. Hey, Pablo, let's do something fun, shall we?
Yes.
Okay. Smile, smile. Ah. Okay. I took a picture. And then if I was in person, I would take a selfie with them and then I'd say, great, what's your number? And I would just assume that that person is giving me their cell phone and I would go quiet until they gave me their cell phone. This is called the signature selfie. It doesn't cost you a dime. It will give you everything you need to follow up with them, but then you have to take it a step further. So then you ask, great, where do you spend majority of your time online? So you want to find out which medium they spend most of their time on because everybody's a little different. I found out that he spent his time on Instagram. So after that, every single day when he would post something, I would comment. And when you're commenting, you're thinking, how can I be a bright spot in their day? How can I add value to them? How can I show my consistency, my work ethic, my reliability with commenting? So every single day he'd post something about how he bet his children that they wouldn't be able to go without sugar for like a week and they broke within 2 days. And I went, you should have charged them double. He posted about his wife seeing Christmas lights and she looked so happy. I went, you should really give your wife Christmas lights like multiple times a year for how happy she was, right? And it was about his family, his wife, his children, his business. I was everywhere all the time to him, just being of value, just adding something funny, showing that I'm listening, showing that I care. Because if you just build rapport, which means they like you, trust you, respect you, and you find their need, you're 65% of the way to a sale. So I had built that top of mind awareness, so much so that as soon as they needed a product or service like mine, they reached out. So they were like, hi, Amanda, we'd love to buy 650 of your books and send them to our best clients. Is that possible? And I, of course, that's pretty easy. Yes. And I will tell you that 6 years later, they bought 1,000 copies and resent them to all of their best clients just recently. So follow-up is critical. Fortune is in the follow-up, but do it in a way that shows that you care, that you're engaged, that you are that bright spot. Because if I had just tried to cold call him, he's got 100 staff. He wouldn't have had the time to be able to talk to me. So they're already looking for the attention with their social media posts, right? You're looking for likes, you're looking for people to comment. So they're looking for that. Why not give it to them there so that they don't feel salesy? They just feel, oh, this person is of value. This person is assisting me. It makes all the difference.
I think so too. And I think the part of the story that you didn't tell that I think is really interesting is that you're not talking about like on their Twitter feed or on their LinkedIn. You were just like in their IG stories, like emoji, that was really cute. Like, don't forget to pack your mittens when you're going skiing, right? Like I've 100% taken that, right? Because Pratiti is asking, what if you're not as big as important as Amanda Holmes? Pratiti, like, I don't think I have 100% taken like license from what Amanda does. And not only do I tell everybody about the signature selfie because it's a perfect formulation of like a perfect hook point, speaking point, and I always like to use it as an example. And it's something that I had always done, but I had never like thought smartly enough to like evangelize it the way that she does. But when I connect with people that are mostly LinkedIn driven to be on my podcast, I also connect with them on Instagram and Facebook and the more personal social medias. Because I now, when I'm in their stories, when I just see their story come through, it might just be like a family post. I'm like, oh man, that's really awesome, right? Like just like that top of mind of encouragement in personal posts builds that rapport long term. And I had felt it before, but it never became so real as when you told that story and everything that's happened. This is now a 7-year relationship that twice over has led to major like book purchases and, like promotion across all sorts of ecosystems, right?
Yeah. So Pratiti, that's funny that you should say that, because I had shown, so maybe you've heard of Motilal Oswal. They're one of the largest financial investment firms in India. They've served 2.3 million Indians. And that was part of my Dream 100 that I was going after. I wanted to win them as clients. And that was who purchased the 100 books. But in front of my whole boot camp, I showed, okay, guys, I want to get the attention of this guy. Watch me do it. And I sent an email that was like, I got his attention, and then he would reply back with like 3 words. And then I'd send another email and he would reply back with like 5 words. And then I would send another email, and everyone was like a paragraph and he'd write a couple of words. And after I had shared that process, which I saw as a huge win, like this guy that has this ginormous company is emailing with me back and forth, whereas they saw it as, they're like, you seem really like, this guy doesn't care about talking to you at all. Like, I would see that and I would feel upset that someone would speak to me that way. And I would feel that I needed more respect. And I went, if they're a true Dream 100, they don't care about you at all. They shouldn't care about you. You are dirt to them. So what do you have to do? You have to start from nothing, and you have to build so much value that they feel morally obligated to answer your phone calls, to reply. So with every comment I was making, I was trying to add value to him. He is a gentleman that has lots of staff. I was watching his Twitter feed. I could see that he was really focused on legacy things. He was investing in schools. He was investing in ashrams. He was doing a lot of investing on things that you could tell had a long lifeline. So I replied back to him, have you ever thought about writing a book? And he went, no. That was it, right? No. And I'm like, that's so surprising that you would say that, because you having so many followers on Twitter, you have such a great words to you. That would be such a great legacy play. Do you have a son in the business or any children? And he goes, just one, started last month, like not even a full sentence. And I went, oh, wow. Well, do you think he'll take it over? And he went, not sure. And I went, well, if you ever need it, right? Like nothing. I'm feeding for some kind of something for him to reply to me, but I'm giving just enough for him to be interested to reply back, because does he want his son to take over the company?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do I know something about that? Absolutely. So I said to him, I would be more than happy to talk to him if you ever wanted that assistance. I talk to children of heirs all the time, because me being in this situation that I am, I can provide some insight and definitely make people a little bit more appreciative of what they have, because I never got that. I got it after my father passed. And so, right, what am I doing? I'm just adding value. I'm giving him ideas of what he can do in his business. I wasn't being needy. I was trying to I added enough value to where he would reply. So that's what we have to do. How can you add so much value that they can't help but start replying and engaging?
Love it. Love it. And then Denise is asking, how do you manage it all, Amanda? Like you can only do this if you're really focused on a select group of people to be doing this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it depends on what your list is. It depends. So you really have to get clear on who are those better relationships that are worth, like, even if you were to set aside 1 hour a week, just 1 hour a week, I'm going to work on replying, engaging with my better buyers, my better relationships, my dream 100, target 12, whatever you call it. And if you can commit to that 1 hour a week over the span of 3 months, 4 months, they'll just be shocked that you had the discipline and the determination to follow up that amount of time. You'll walk your way into some kind of engagement of some sort, whether they're just like, I feel bad. You engage with everything. I have to at least reply somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. Amanda, I wanna go into your conference playbook, right? You were speaking at a lot of these conferences. You had this like outreach campaign. And then in the spirit of not being too fancy, you pulled out like a genius card that I really want you to talk about on this podcast. Tell me about the human billboard.
So in chapter 7, my father talks about dominating trade shows. And he said the first step to dominating a trade show is getting noticed. So I thought, okay, how can I get noticed? And at first I had my team looking up how to like design a backpack so that if I was walking around, people would see my backpack. And then they started sending me the designs and I went, this is pretty pathetic. I don't think a lot of people will see that backpack. So I went on Google while we were in our meeting and I typed in human billboard. This huge, like 4-foot billboard that glows. I don't know if I can share a screen on here, but can I?
I'll look it up.
Can I share my screen?
Why don't you tell the story, Ryan? Can you look it up?
Okay. So I found this human billboard and I got a design done on it. And I went to my trade show tour with this human billboard on my back. And it said, want to double sales? Ask for a complimentary chapter from one of the most recommended sales books of all time, Ultimate, and it had the Ultimate Sales Machine on it. And the number one compliment I got from all of these trade shows was, that is the most brilliant marketing tactic I've ever seen. You are the smartest marketer at this entire event. Like over and over and over again. It was hysterical. Like people would stare from like 100 yards away. They'd be taking pictures. We kept joking that I needed to get a GoPro and put it on top so you would watch the people stare. So getting noticed, check. The second step is generating leads. So what did I do? I put a QR code so that when they were already taking pictures because they were posting on social, they were sending it to their friends, right? It was so hilarious that people just couldn't stop taking pictures of it. And that QR code would then lead them to a page. They'd opt in and I'd get their email. I also took chapter 4, so one of the chapters from the book, and I handed it out personally. So we handed out about 600 of those, which was fantastic. People were leaning in for it. I didn't just shove it down someone's throat. They'd be saying, yeah, I want to double my sales. Oh, you're going to give me just a couple pages? Yeah, I could read that on my flight back to where I live, right? And then generating sales. So it was much easier to make a sale when you're just selling a book. So we closed 400 book sales that's not counting from stage. So without having a stage and without having a booth, I closed 400 sales, which is probably more units than majority of the booths that were there. So much so that the last event I went to, they shut me down because I generated too much of a buzz and the sponsors were getting jealous.
So good. So good. I love it. So one of the things that you and I have bonded on is unique trade show kind of like techniques, right? This idea that you can pay to have a booth, and that's kind of like a sucker bet because you're just put into this fishbowl. But if you can completely stand out from the crowd, there's just way more ROI, and then be able to generate content from it. I love seeing the pictures of you with this thing. I just shared it in the chat on Amazon, which I think is the version that you had. But like the idea of you walking around with this backpack, and then having the presence of mind of you told me that like you had a bunch of people coming up to you, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, but there's even more people just taking pictures of me. So put a QR code on it, and then knowing to tie that in with a lead magnet that makes perfect sense, that then becomes lead capture. I just thought it was so brilliant, and it's definitely something that's in my future. I think Gareth's going to use it next week at his next drone conference for sure. Gareth, if you can get it on time. I think Amanda's making this thing popular has made it much harder to find than when she originally found it. How many people would you estimate have like told you that they're going to buy one of these human billboards?
Oh, so many. And I told the guy, I was like, I can sell this. Can I be an affiliate? And he's like, this is a second business. I'm not really interested in selling these. I'm like, you have no idea. No idea what I'm capable of. So I'm sure he's gotten all of this business and he's angry about it because he told me that he just wanted it to be a side business. But
I've been trying to get Matt Kleinrock to start selling this stuff. I'm like, Matt, like you're a trade show booth guy. Like you should have this in your inventory.
Oh, absolutely. You just have to make sure that people know that trade shows will shut them down. They should like call ahead of time.
Yeah, that may happen. Or you could just
it's too good.
Or you could literally just not go to the trade show, hang out outside the trade show, walking up and down, and have the same effect.
Yes, but what was also really funny about the process was that I was actually wearing it. So like people would come up and they'd be like, oh yeah, I know that book. I have that book. And I'm like, oh yeah, my father wrote it. I wrote the new edition. And you'd watch their face go from like, oh my God, don't even talk to me, to like Christmas morning, like, oh, a new edition. You're Amanda? Like this experience was so freaking hysterical. So it was also cool to be the CEO and carry it around. And some people gave me flack about it. They're like, why wouldn't you just hire somebody to do that? I'm like, why would I take away the utter joy of watching people's faces when they saw this thing? I used to be bald for a while. For about 5 years, I was bald. Walking through a trade show as a bald woman was way more mortifying than wearing a 4-foot billboard, shining billboard on my back.
Amanda, did you, so we're going to go in like 7 minutes. We're going to go into our relationship driven growth strategy sessions where we do an AMA and everybody comes on stage. You're invited to stay. I know you got other stuff to do, but you can hang out as long as you want. But one of the things that I'm going to talk about there is the idea that I feel like we're headed into this world of like qualitative insights, right? Like the quantitative insights, the numbers are getting really, really commoditized. And when I think of the opportunity of a CEO carrying a backpack that is like, come talk to me, I'm the CEO of X corporation, and being able to directly interact with 200 of your clients, 200 people in your market, 100 people, and the insights that you can gain from that. Did you, in those conversations, did you gain any kind of like qualitative insights from somebody coming up to you, telling you about the book, or like a success case, a story that you could then tell later, anything like that?
Oh my God, so many.
Yeah.
It was like, that was probably my favorite part of the whole book launch, was watching people's faces and hearing their stories. Because luckily we do have a brand that has affected so many people, and in such a magnanimous way. Like there was this one gentleman, he walked up to me and he's like, you have no idea what this book has meant to me. And the gentleman that I was with, David Asarno, went, hold that moment, hold that thought. Can I record what you're about to say? And he was like, yes. And so he recorded and he went, when I first started, I thought I couldn't do a business, but then I read that book and I thought, yes, I can start my own business. So I decided to start my own business, and I followed every chapter of this book, and we went from 0 to 15 million. And I just recently sold that. And now I have 4 businesses, and they've all grown to 7 and 8 figures, all because I followed this methodology, and it changed my life, and it changed my family, and it changed my world. And he is like crying, and he's a big dude, like pretty buff guy. And then I started crying, and it was just this natural moment that happened. And because we recorded it, we then used it for ads. And I even heard another guy at another event that was like, yeah, that ad with that guy crying about the impact of your book, like I'd already bought it 2 times, and I bought it a 3rd time after I watched it.
Incredible. Yeah, here I thought I was the only one that had ordered this thing like 3 times over. That's really cool. I mean, what would you say out of all the things, right? So you had this like really elaborate affiliate strategy that you Dream 100. You had this like core story outreach to speaking engagements. You had the backpack. You obviously ran ads, right? Because it's a consumer product. What do you think was the most effective thing out of the whole launch? Like, what do you think moved the needle the most?
So Dear Dad was a critical one, but I'll also tell you, in our final hours, we generated more sales in the 48 hours before we went live with the book than we had in the prior 2 months. So we got a big blitz in the first 4 days of selling the book. And then I did. So what I have to say about this is like, FOMO is the best salesperson ever, right? So we said, we got a certain amount of sales, and I was afraid that we were going to sell out of our whole stock in the first week. So I went back to my publisher and I said, hey guys, I think you're going to have to print more copies, because I've sold 70% of your stock and it's only been 4 days. And they went, well, I don't know if you're really going to be able to sell that. And I went, give me 24 hours. I posted on social and I said, hey guys, I need to know all of the bulk orders by the end of the day, because the publisher needs to know. And I think I'm going to sell out of my stock. Within the day, we sold out 115% within 24 hours, just from me posting. And I don't have a huge following online. It's qualitative. It's not quantitative. I haven't bought my followers, right? It's like between 4,000 to 5,000 on each different social media platform.
You got a very modest following for who you are.
Yeah. So, oh, thanks. So my email database, I wish they'd just come to social. I don't know why.
Right.
They're older. But anyways, so I outsold our stock within 24 hours because I put a pressure on it of, I need to know by the end of the day, stock is running out. Then we had a whole nother 2 months where I didn't really sell. very much. Like, just they were coming in 50 orders here, 50 orders there, 60 orders here. But then the last 48 hours, I said, I have 48 hours to hit the bestseller list, and I need another 974 copies. Like, who wants to buy this book and help me hit the bestseller? And I will tell you, everyone and their mother was like determined to help me in this process. So people started buying up bulk. I'll buy as many as you want. How many do you need? I'll buy 100. Do you need 200? It was like this crazy rally. And like I said, in that 48 hours, we sold more than the prior 2 months combined. So fear of missing out is a real thing. You definitely want to count down that timer and say, we only need this many left, or you only have this many left. It really works.
I think that there's an asterisk to that fear of missing out, because yes, scarcity definitely drives demand. But I think what you experienced in those 48 hours, Amanda, I think it's like the work that you've done over the last like 7-8 years of just like everything that you've been through. You've been such a positive force in people's lives. You've done everything the right way. Like, you have this very compelling story of personal and professional transformation. You grew up in public. You've helped so many people, and you've done it all very relationally, right? Like following your intuition and your true north and what you're doing, that it's not surprising to me that when you're like, when you, it's like build it before you need it network thing, right? Like, you've built this like incredible network based on adding value to people, that you get that shot, right? Like, you get the ability to say, plus you put in all this work in this launch, everybody saw you do it. You get that ability to say, hey, these are the last 48 hours. If you got one more favor in me for you, you asked and you received, right? Like, I think that's the telltale sign of somebody that's done it the right way, on top of the trigger of like fear of missing out, right? Like, the fact that you doubled your sales at that moment, to me, is the thing.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I didn't want to cut you short of that. The last thing I want to do, Amanda, is I want you to promote the Core Story Bootcamp and the Dream 100 Bootcamp and like whatever else you got going on, right? Because full disclosure, you are one of very, very few people. It's like you and Christopher Lockhead, whatever they tell me to put money into, I'm like, yup. And then I figure out later, because I know that it pays for itself. I've taken the Core Story Bootcamp. I've taken the Dream 100 class. They've both been amazing for me. Big part of my strategy going forward. What's the, what is the best way to kind of like get started with whatever you're doing?
I would say just, you can start with the book,
Okay.
ultimatesalesmachine.com. Easy peasy.
Okay. And then in that case, can you talk about how like instrumental it was for you to, we were in this mastermind not that long ago, and you were like, man, my mission is this like place that I want to build in the US. And I don't know if the market is ready for me to fully be me and lead the charge with this. Can you tell us a little bit about how, number one, what this place is that you're working on and how people can help, and what it meant for you to just go fully like integrated into this thing that you're doing?
I think that speaks volumes to the people that you have around you and the brilliance of masterminding, like what you guys have right here. Everybody is such a great community. I'm sure from all the banter in the webinar chat, I can tell that you just have cultivated such a wonderful group of people, and they're actually engaging, and they're helping one another, and they're connecting other people for them. So that's one critical thing. And then another was, in that particular mastermind, they told me to lead with my passion and my mission first. And it felt like it was like the last piece I needed to get the validation of like, yes, it's okay to speak about, my goal in life, which is to create this space where people can come and just reset. And it's something that has never been created quite like this. And I've studied under an Indian saint, Guruji, for the last 10 years. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I've never met anybody more intelligent, more compassionate, and more selfless. And she just has a gift for helping people find themselves and to connect to their true destiny and to rise above the swamp that we live in. So I'm a big proponent of this mission and creating these centers that can help people heal from their mind and their body. And yeah, That's the link, divineblissinternational.org. That's my love.
Yeah. So if you want to add a little value to whatever Amanda really, really cares about, give a little donation to divineblissinternational.org. No big deal. Do that as a favor to me. Episode 200. Amanda, thank you so much for doing this. We're going to roll into the strategy sessions here. This has been, getting this like backstage seat to watching you do all this stuff in the short amount that we've gotten to know each other has been a really big privilege, right? Like the sense of validation that you have given me by like, believing in the stuff that I do and the positive energy that you put into my life has really been a massive like push forward for me in moments that I really, really needed it. And I'm just really excited that this has gone so well for you and that you were well on the way to the story that you deserve to be living. And I just couldn't think of anybody that I would have rather done this like 200th episode with. So just thank you so much.
Thank you. You're amazing.